I'm Nancy Merrill, and I ask a lot of questions to find out what really goes on in the minds of millionaires.
This is Mario Garnero, the world-famous Brazilian entrepreneur, considered the visionary who developed the computer, mobile phone, and biofuel industries in his country. He's the founder and chairman of Brazil Invest, Brazil's premier merchant bank. Credited as the father of the ethanol car, he's been coming to China for over 30 years, sharing his business acumen and passion for sustainable energy. Is it easy to do business with your Chinese friends?
They do not like the Brazilians to say no. We in Brazil do not like to say no, and the Chinese also
They don't like to say no either, really.
Yeah.
His enormous business success is due in part to the personal relationships he has had with international figures like Henry Kissinger, the United Nations Kofi Annan, former American presidents Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, and Bill Clinton, and Prince Rainier and Prince Albert of Monaco. Mario, this is a great pleasure to talk with you.
It's a great pleasure, Nancy, to be here with you. I know how successful you are in Shanghai and your program, so I came a long way just to talk to you.
You came all the way from Brazil just to talk to me. I'm very honored.
Very good.
You have been coming to China since 1981. Tell me why you came here in 1981.
Because I had the idea that China would be waking up very quickly, would be integrated in the world much faster than people thought at that occasion.
What made you think it would be faster than what most people expected?
Because there was firstly a tradition of the Chinese people. Second, a very aggressive way of progressing and changing into a more open society. And thirdly, that China has been for a long while, and you know that they tell that Colombo came into the Americas and discovered the Americas. The Chinese went there almost 50 years before, so they were already exploring seas and discovering ourselves before even Colombo. So I think that there was a lot of energy, a lot of opportunities, and proved well. I brought together Petrobras at that time, the Brazilian National Oil, Vale, that today is the large exporter of iron ore, and more companies into China, and proved that what I have thought is realizing today was a trade that goes between Brazil and China over $50 billion.
$50 billion.
We overpassed the States in our trade. China overpassed the States.
Wow. When I think of you again, there's so much to talk about, but it strikes me that simply petroleum and mobile phones and computers have literally defined the world as we know it. I mean, look at China. One of their biggest industries is the car industry, and you know that very well because of your involvement with Volkswagen, okay? But here they are building all these cars for this large consumer class that is emerging. But the cost of fuel is going up around the world.
That's
so
correct.
Speak to me about that and tell me what you say to your Chinese friends who are in the sustainable energy business, which is one of your biggest loves of your career, and the automobile industry. What do you say to them? What do you advise them? And what kinds of questions do they ask you?
I think that on the environmental process, what we had, if you go to São Paulo was a very polluted town. When we launched it, and the program of the ethanol, I launched in 1979, because at that time it was the second shock of the oil, the petroleum. The price higher were on the skies. And we had a problem in Brazil because we are not producing enough oil at that time. So I took the responsibility to put the cars running only in ethanol. And down now is 94% of the fleet.
94% of the cars in Brazil run on ethanol.
Run in ethanol.
Is that the highest percent of any country in the world?
Oh, yes.
How viable is the idea of ethanol cars in a country that does not enjoy this incredible rich agricultural area that Brazil is? You can pretty much grow anything in Brazil, almost year-round. Very few countries have that benefit, and certainly here in China, as you know, it's a huge country, and the north is always sort of at the mercy of Mother Nature, a drought or a flood or the topsoil's been washed away. So how do you foresee something like this ever happening here in China?
But notwithstanding this, China is the third or the fourth largest producer of ethanol in the world. So the first is still the States, the second is Brazil. China comes very close on that. But the most important, Nancy, is that I do not envision the ethanol today as a substitute of oil, because what you would have to do, it's a huge amount of sugarcane plantation.
But you have the benefit. And frankly, I'm quite surprised that China comes in fourth.
Yeah, they have a large
in
production.
supply, and that's really interesting to me. But you have, I want to speak to the actual petroleum as a combined car. You call that flex fuel.
Flex fuel.
Flex fuel. I did not know what that meant.
Yeah.
Flex fuel means the combination of the sustainable fuel like ethanol, and then
you just change a touch a button, and you could run in gasoline. You touch back, you could run on ethanol 100%.
But that's on a new car. You can't take old cars and put that kind of situation. It has to be a new car.
It has the new cars that we had in
Now,
the
here
US.
in China, one of the big things, now that China is looking away from being a totally export economy to a domestic consumer economy, one of the biggest things is the car industry for them, to build their own cars, produce their own cars, and service their own people with their cars. Will these cars, to your knowledge, have that ability to be a flex fuel, just like you're describing?
Sure.
That's what they are.
This is today is a proven technology, so this would be not a problem. What I think that the ethanol is now, we start with sugar cane, but if you take the bagasse, you could put 50% on top of that with the new technology that comes with the celluloid production from ethanol. So you have the sugar cane, you extract, you have this transformed in ethanol by a process mostly on distillation, but you could then take what is the leftover on that and start a new process of celluloid transformation into ethanol and increasing at 50%.
So what you're saying now is the technology is advancing. So if you start with sugarcane, am I correct, and you produce X amount of ethanol, there is a residual that's left. And from that, you're coming up with new technology?
On the sugar plantation.
Oh, on the plantation.
On the plantation. So what normally is done today is that you have the sugar cane, you plant, and have only that. And the leftover there is huge because you do not use the whole. So if you take this and transform, only what we have in Brazil, we could go 50% on top of our actual production.
And start
today.
exporting it.
Yeah.
Here in China, are they using mostly sugarcane?
Yeah, they are using different, and also some kind of. Today, the technologies come. You could produce from wood. You could produce from from the garbage. You could produce, expanding on that. We are with an American company now, starting in Brazil to produce oil from the plastic bags and float plastic that are
you can take
those
plastic bags, deconstruct them, and produce.
Because the plastic is oil.
Of course, came from oil.
And so you take this down with the new technology. We are starting in Petrobras right now together with this company that we are partners.
That is a beautiful thought to me. Because I must tell you, I always feel very, very guilty about using plastic bags.
That's correct.
Because you say, are they really biodegradable? They're not. No. And I used to live in California, which was way ahead of all the other states. And they'd ask you if you wanted paper or plastic, and you'd feel terrible if you took plastic. I would never take plastic.
In Brazil, it's forbidden now.
Well, now it is. Is it easy to do business with your Chinese friends, your Chinese colleagues?
What I feel mostly is that they are very direct, very decisive, but they do not like the Brazilians to say no. We in Brazil do not like to say no. And the Chinese also
They don't like to say no either, really.
Yeah. So you have to understand when the eyes tell you okay or tell no. It's the same with Brazilians. So we get along very well.
You get along very well.
Very well.
On the next Minds of Millionaires, meet Gerwen Yao, chairman of Shanghai Jiahua, the largest homegrown cosmetic company in China.
每个外资企业都犯过错误，因为他们太骄傲了。他们觉得来中国太容易了，其实不稀奇。像我这样的企业，曾经是中国最大的，我92年只能拿出几百万钱打广告，他拿10几个亿打广告。
Jiahua now has a large line of products, including Herbivist, Shanghai Vive, and Liu Shen. Traditionally, China uses corn and other grains to make costly ethanol to replace gasoline, while Brazil uses sugarcane that's cheaper to process and more efficient because they use the stalks and the waste. Consequently, Brazil is the world's largest exporter of biofuel and the second largest producer. China is a major customer and has lowered their tariffs on ethanol imports to maximize their move to more biofuel use. Again, Brazil is so fortunate because you have such a kind terroir, land, and Mother Nature seems to be very kind to you. And you have found enormous petroleum. It's a deep-sea petroleum off your coast.
That's correct. 7,000 kilometers deep.
7,000 kilometers deep. So tell me what your relationship, Brazil's relationship, is to China now. Just in terms of, forget food, because that's a whole nother issue, but just in terms of energy, because you're all part of BRIC, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and now South Africa. So it's BRICS with the S. But just in terms of, you have a very nice trade agreement, obviously, with China. Where do you see this going, the petroleum business and China, and the ethanol business and China?
I think that for the oil is a very good question. The oil today, Brazil is exporting already 500,000 barrels per day into China. It's a $5 billion operation per year. The ethanol would be something that could come. Petrobras has, in fact, in Shanghai, a deposit here for storage. So I think that this will come down the road. But I think that the relation between Brazil and China today, as I told you, overpasses the trade between Brazil and the States. But if you take this, the figure is staggering. The HSBC made just a big big ad telling that we are putting together offices in Brazil and in China dedicated to the trade. Because we believe that the $50 billion today will be in 5 years going to $125 billion on the trade between Brazil and China.
Is it easy to do business with your Chinese friends, your Chinese colleagues?
What I feel mostly is that they are very direct, very decisive, but they do not like the Brazilians to say no. We in Brazil do not like to say no, and the Chinese also
they don't like to say no either, really.
Yeah, so you have to understand when the eyes tell you okay or tell no. It's the same with Brazilians, so we get along very well.
You get along very well.
Very well.
Well, I had to learn that, when I came here, because you find that the Chinese are very polite.
Yeah.
So if you say, do you like this, they'll say yes.
Yeah.
When they don't, they rarely say anything that's negative.
Yeah.
And so you wonder, what are they really thinking? But that's part of the culture.
Sure.
But now you're telling me that's the same
The
in
Brazilians
Brazil. So
yes,
how do you ever get anything done? How do you ever know what each other are thinking? Or do
By
you...
the eyes.
Just the eyes. What do the eyes tell you?
Well, tell them if they are pleased or not, and vice versa, if we are pleased or not on that. I think that there is part of the culture here in China and Brazil that, notwithstanding, we have a very important group of Chinese in Brazil, but not predominant. Predominant in Brazil, Japanese. We have 1.5 million Japanese in Brazil.
I read that. Yes.
Yes. We have Italians. I don't know how many Italians have Italian passport. 25 million, more than is 1/3 of Italy is in São Paulo and Brazil.
Why?
Because the immigration went there, and you have Germans, you have Swedish people there. So Brazil is a melting pot like the States, and China is not yet a melting pot, but we reproduced almost what you did in the States. Polish people, so, and each individually with their own culture. But what is quite important, for instance, the Japanese, that normally they are secluded and they constitute a group in every country. In Brazil, they married with Brazilians, so they are completely integrated.
So what is it about Brazil that you have immigrants intermarrying, what you've just described as the Japanese don't stay off to themselves and marry within their own culture, their own ethnic groups that they enter? What is it about Brazil?
I think that Brazil, there is a sense, you have Jews and Arab on the same street, one at left, the other at right. And they go to the same restaurant, they are good friends. And so I think that the culture in Brazil came to be absorbing the ethnics and transforming them into Brazilians. So you do not see any kind of hostility between a Jew and between an Arab or the Japanese that are secluded or the Polish that are, they are the Germans and so on. They are all integrated.
So Chinese have no problems moving there and assimilating within the whole society.
Oh, sure.
Same.
Now Koreans are coming. Japan.